welcome back to my channel, which is always trying to equip you with knowledges that can help you to further your career and to perform better in your examinations. Today we have a very fresh new video out here that is all about the lung function test. Okay, lung function test is a very common fundamental test that is performed to assess the working capability of the functional lungs. So first we shall be looking into the definition of what lung function test is all about. It is said that lung function test, which also is known as pulmonary function tests, are non-invasive tests that show how well the lungs are working. The tests measure lung volume, capacity, rates of flow and gas exchange. So as of this, we have found that there are two different names that the lung function test can have. One is the lung function test itself, another test is the pulmonary function tests, which obviously is the more commonly used name, because lung function test, which is shortened as LFT, this short form is sometimes very confusing because we have another LFT that is usually performed to assess the function of the liver. That one is the liver function test. So that should not be confused with the present topic, that is the pulmonary function test, which is the more appropriate name. So what does the pulmonary function test do? It measures the lung volume, capacity, rates of flow and gas exchange. Regarding the lung volumes, I would be having a separate video which would be describing the different volumes and capacities of the lung. Now, what is the use of this lung function test? It's given out here. The information of the lung function test can help the healthcare provider to diagnose and decide the treatment of certain lung disorders. Okay, so this is the very basic utility of the lung function test. We shall be taking a short look into the different kinds of lung disorders that can be diagnosed with the help of the lung function test. Now, before performing that, let us understand what is the meaning of lung function. As you can see out here, it is to allow the oxygen into the body and carbon dioxide out of the body. So this is the definition of the basic function, that is to allow oxygen into the body and carbon dioxide out of the body. Now, let us have a look on this video to find out how this thing happens inside our body. As you can see, the lungs are visible out here. The lobes are differentially colored and the lobes are expanding with every inhalation and exhalation. Okay, so these are the bronchi, the terminal bronchioles, which finally ends in the sacs called alveoli. You can also see that the alveoli is expanding, and with every expansion of the alveoli, air enters, and as you can see out here, that air is carrying the oxygen. That oxygen diffuses into the blood capillaries and the carbon dioxide diffuses out of these blood capillaries into the space of the alveoli, the alveolar space. Okay, so as these things goes on, we have other parts of the lung also. You can see that the lungs are expanding and contracting. Below the lung, there is a muscular partition that separates the thoracic and the abdominal cavity. That partition is now being shown as the diaphragm out here. So the diaphragm also moves up and down with every inhalation and exhalation. And here we see the different lymphatic nodes and the lymphatic ducts that play a very important role in the immune function of lung disorders. So these are the lung structures, and what I have shown is the basic function of the lung. Again, I repeat out here, it is to allow oxygen into the body and carbon dioxide out of the body. We have seen how this thing takes place. have taken a very brief look into the functions of the lungs, let us now find out what is the test able to diagnose. Okay, so the spirometers are the name of the instrument with which we are conducting this kind of tests, and there are two kind of disorders that get diagnosed with the help of spirometers. First is known as the obstructive and the other one known as the restrictive. Now, what is the difference between this obstructive and restrictive lung disorders that are getting diagnosed with the help of spirometers? In the obstructive lung disorders, we find that there is an obstruction in airway outflow. So I emphasize the point out here, airway outflow pathway, causing less amount of air to be exhaled, consequently more amount to be retained within the lung for every single breath. So obstructive disorders is basically an exhalatory disorders in which greater amount of air remains inside the lung. That means less amount of carbon dioxide can exit out of the lungs. So if in the previous breath an amount of carbon dioxide gets retained, so for the next successive breaths the amount of oxygen will go inside but in lesser amounts, because the previous retained carbon dioxide is going to occupy the spaces which is supposed to be occupied by the oxygen. So that is an exhalatory problem, that is the obstructive one. Coming now to the restrictive lung disorders, in which there is a restriction on the expansibility of lung during inhalation. So this is the point to be noted, restriction on the expansibility of lung during inhalation. That means a person will be having difficulty to breathe in. The result is less amount of air will enter the lungs in every breath. So there is the restriction on the volume of air inhaled. That means the inhaled air will be less in amount, and consequently less amount of air enters into lung for every single breath. Now both these two types of disorders, ventilatory disorders more appropriately to be termed as, both these two types of ventilatory disorders can get diagnosed with the help of spirometry. Now how is this entire process done? In order to find that out, there are certain steps in it. Okay, in the first step we find that the patient is asked to remain seated in a chair in an exam room and free himself of all his worries and anxieties. So if a person is in the anxious state of mind, it is very difficult to perform spirometry. After that, a very important step, the nose is restricted from inhalation and exhalation. That means, as you can see, it's given out here, a nose clip is placed on the nose to keep both the nostrils closed. This will nullify or at least minimize airflow through the nasal passageways. So that is the second step. The third important step is that the patient is asked to place a cup-like breathing mask around his mouth or insert a mouthpiece into his mouth. Fourth important step is that there is an instruction that is given to the patient by the doctor or the nurse. The instruction is to take a deep breath in. This is the point to be noted. A deep breath inside is taken, and once the breath is taken inside, the breath is held inside the lungs for a few seconds. After that, there is a forceful exhalation as hard as the patient can into that breathing mask, which has been given to the patient in the step 3. Next, what happens? The same kind of process gets repeated for at least 3 times. The purpose is to make sure that in each of these repetitions, the results that we get are consistent with each other. If the results vary much, then the number of tests can also increase. Finally, the highest value from 3 close test reading would be used as the final result of the patient. That is how the entire spirometry done. Next, we shall be taking a look into the spirometer machine. understand the machine of the spirometer, we need to know the basic principle which makes a spirometer operational. So here we should be taking a look into a diagram with which we will try to understand the basic principle behind the operation of a spirometer. So what we see on this diagram is that there is a mouthpiece. The mouthpiece, already explained before, it is attached with the mouth of the patient, and attached to the mouthpiece is a tubing. As you can see, the tubing is attached to an inverted bell jar. The tubing has passed into another, through another jar. In that jar there is a fluid out here. On the top there is a space. Okay, the bell jar is inverted, and the base of the bell jar is attached to a rope which passes through two different pulleys. The other end of rope which attached with a weight. There is a sharp pointed end that is also attached to this weight. Here we have a rotating drum, and covered with the rotating drum is a piece of paper. So if we attach a pen at this tip, for every movement of this weight up and down, there will be a graph drawn on this paper, and this graph is valuable for finding out the different volumes. Now, if the patient is expiring, so the patient is allowing air to move into this container with jar, more amount of air enters into this jar, and that pushes up the bell jar. With every push up of this bell jar, due to this pulley kind of arrangement, the weight moves down, and as the weight moves down, the pen that is attached with this weight draws a downward curve onto this paper that is attached with the rotating drum. So for every expiration or exhalation, there is a downward slope of the graph, and for every inspiration the opposite would be true. That means there would be an upward slope of the graph. Now if we look into the graph that gets drawn, the graph is known also as the spirogram. This is what will be the normal appearance of the graph. These areas represents the normal appearances. That means the patient is inhaling and exhaling in the normal rate without any kind of exertions. As you can see out here, there is a closed circuit that gets formed in between the lungs of the patient and the instrument called the spirometer. So whenever there is an exhalation, the pen is moving down, and similarly a downward slope would be formed. Whenever there is an inhalation, the pen moves up, and accordingly there will be an upward slope. Now you see that this level is the normal level. Here you see a peak out here. What does this peak refers to? That there has been a forceful inspiration, the one that we ask the patient to do when the performance of spirometry is done. This downward slope, it represents expiration. So as we ask the patient to exhale as hard as possible, so a downward slope from the peak of expiration is obtained on the graph. Done. So this is the graph from which we can make certain measurements regarding the volumes and capacities of the lungs. You can see in the diagram as well as in the steps of spirometry that is previously explained, some sort of lung problems are better avoided away from spirometry, because in the spirometer the patient is asked to take in or breathe very deep. Thereafter the patient is asked to hold the breath inside. After holding for a few seconds, the patient is asked to forcefully exhale as much as possible the air out of his or her lungs. Now this kind of activities on the lungs can be exertional for few varieties of lung disorders, for which it is safe to avoid the spirometry. We shall be taking a look into these different contraindications that prevents the performance of spirometry. This is the contraindications. First one, as is given, it is hemoptysis of unknown origin. Hemoptysis means there is cough, and along with the cough, bloody mucus is coming out. So that is called hemoptysis. Next is the pneumothorax, in which air gets filled into the pleural spaces. In the case of unstable angina pectoris, that means a very kind of specific pain in the cardiac region. If there be any kind of such pain, it is better to stay away from spirometry. If there is a history of a recent myocardial infection, it is also advisable to stay away from spirometry. Thoracic aneurysms means certain abnormal swellings of the blood vessels that are present in the thorax. So if there is any kind of aneurysms be present inside the thorax, it is better to stay away from spirometry. Otherwise, there is a chance that the aneurysms might burst inside the thorax and would cause a medical emergency. Similarly, abdominal aneurysms also are important contraindications of spirometry. Cerebral aneurysms, because as you are exerting this kind of breathing pattern, at that time what happens, there is a pressure in the cerebral vasculature also. So if aneurysms be present in the brain area, it can immediately cause a stroke. If there is a recent eye surgery, say within 2 weeks, then also it is better to stay away from spirometry, because within the 2 weeks, the intraocular pressure, that means the pressure that is present inside the eye, usually remains high. So when there is a forced expiration, intraocular pressure might increase further. So it is better for the patient having recent eye surgery to stay away from spirometry. If there are any kind of surgical procedures that are performed in the abdomen or in the thorax, it's better to stay away from spirometry. Otherwise, the surgical wound would be delayed to get repaired. The patients with a history of syncope associated with forced exhalation, that means few patients are available who loses their consciousness when they try to exhale out forcefully. So if there is any such kind of history, it is better to stay away from spirometry. Patients who are having tuberculosis diagnosed, they should never go for spirometry until and unless the tuberculosis is all treated and cured up. So finally, it's now time to know what exactly are the values that is measured by spirometry. First is the forced vital capacity. What does it measure? It measures the total volume of air that you are able to blow forcefully into the mouthpiece following a full inhalation. The next thing to measure is the forced expiratory volume in the first 1 second. So that is a very important parameter, because normally 80% of the total exhaled air gets blown out in the first 1 second of expiration. So if this normal value is not found in any particular patient, that indicates that there is a problem in the lung function. So with that, there is another ratio out here that also needs to be known. The ratio is FEV1 by FVC ratio. That is an important parameter and is calculated by dividing the measured FEV1 value by the measured FVC value. FEV1 by FVC ratio should normally be 80% for normal individuals. If there is any kind of deviations of the value, either above or below this 80%, that obviously indicates either a restrictive or an obstructive disorder of the lung. And finally, the value that is important is the duration. That means the total expiration time for the spirometry test, which is measured in seconds. For normal patients, 6 seconds should be considered as standard for these tests. So for the best and most accurate results, you should try to exhale for a minimum of 6 seconds, even if one feels that the breath is running out. So thanks for watching this very important video, which constitutes a part of the syllabus of medical terminology as is laid out in the paper 2 of it under the syllabus of McCourt. If you find this information not that useful, then you are invited to write in this number. You can WhatsApp in this number. If you have any kind of suggestions, then also you can put the suggestions either in the comment box down here below or the number that is given to you here on the screen. Before I move away of this video, I should be giving you a list of the other things that one must know of spirometry. We will be preparing videos on all of these related topics on spirometry. First is the analyzing the results of spirometry, and second is how clinical decisions are taken based on the measurements of spirometry. We will be discussing in another video the different abnormal values of spirometry and what does those mean. We will also make a video on the visual depiction of the spirometry results. That means it is not always necessary to mathematically calculate the values to find out an accurate clinical diagnosis. Certain visual depiction is also available, so that just by seeing the depiction at once we can conclude a diagnosis. Obviously, what we have not discussed in this video but will be discussed in some other video is the preparation of patients for spirometry. That means what kind of arrangements do we make for the patient so as spirometry be an accurate test for the patient. And there is a common question that is it necessary for normal healthy individuals to undergo spirometry? That common questions will be addressed in some other videos also. The types of spirometers will be discussed in a separate video, as well as the different diagnostic centers of spirometry that are available in and around the different diagnostic labs that are available around us, or maybe in Kolkata or the adjacent areas of Kolkata. We will be giving you a short list of the different diagnostic center. In order to prepare the list, all the viewers are welcome to report the diagnostic centers that they have in their own locality which are performing the spirometry tests. So on all these topics, different videos will be made and will be published. If you are willing to learn all the materials that I have listed out here, you are advised to stay subscribed to this channel. Hope to see you soon with a new different video. Do subscribe if you like it, and if you are willing to expand your knowledge on all the different topics that I have given you a list of. Thank you. Thanks for the day. Hope to see you soon with a new video. Thanks.